You are standing at a funeral. You are wearing black. Someone is crying 2 rows behind you. You know exactly what to do because you have done this before or seen it done 100 times on screen. But the real answer to where any of this came from is far stranger than a tradition. It goes back further than religion. It goes back further than language itself. Your brain did not invent grief. It inherited it. Somewhere in a limestone cave in what is now Israel, roughly 100,000 years ago, a group of early humans dug a shallow pit. They placed a body inside it, curled, deliberate, not discarded, placed. Beside the body, they set the jaw of a wild boar into the person's hands. This is one of the oldest deliberate burials ever found at a site called Kafze. And the archaeologist who helped establish just how old and how intentional it was, Arella Hovers, has spent decades arguing that this was not an accident of geology. This was a choice. Why would it matter? Because a body left on the surface simply rots. It attracts scavengers. It smells. There is no survival advantage to burying the dead. None. And yet humans have been doing it for at least 100 millennia, often at real cost to themselves, digging into hard ground with nothing but stone and bone and bare hands. Something other than survival was driving this. Think about what grief actually does to you today. It slows you down. It makes you replay the same memory on a loop. It makes you want to touch something that belonged to the person who is gone. None of that helps you hunt, or gather, or reproduce. By the cold logic of evolution, grief should have been optimized away a long time ago. It wasn't, which means it was doing something evolution needed. Here's the strange part. The earliest burials were not universal displays of grief for everyone who died. They were selective. Some bodies were left where they fell. Others were carefully arranged, sometimes with red ochre pigment covering the skin, sometimes with tools, sometimes with flowers, based on pollen traces found in graves in places like Shanidar Cave in Iraq. Someone was making decisions about who mattered enough to be treated this way. That decision is the actual birth of the funeral, not the pit, not the pigment, the decision. Paleoanthropologist João Zilhão has spent years studying ochre use at Neanderthal burial sites, and his research suggests something uncomfortable for anyone who assumes only modern humans buried their dead with meaning. Neanderthals appear to have done it too. At sites like La Chapelle-aux-Saints in France, tens of thousands of years before modern humans arrived in Europe. Which means the instinct to mark a death with ritual may not be a uniquely human trait at all. It may be older than our species. Let that sit for a second. If a different branch of the human family tree, one that went extinct, was already digging graves and laying bodies in deliberate positions, then grief did not start with us. We did not invent the idea that death deserves a response. We inherited it from something that came before us, and it never left. Now think about your own instincts. When someone you love dies today, you do not need to be taught what to do. Something in you already knows to gather, to speak their name out loud, to keep an object that belonged to them, even a small one, even one with no practical use. Anthropologist Paul Pettit, who has spent his career mapping the deep history of human burial, has argued that these behaviors form a continuous thread stretching back through tens of thousands of years of hominin history. Not a modern invention layered on top of biology, a biological behavior all along. That reframes everything about what a funeral actually is. It is not a cultural performance. It is not something religion created and society adopted. It is closer to an ancient survival behavior, one that outlived the specific pressures that shaped it, The same way your fear of the dark outlived the predators that once justified it. The body is gone. The instinct remains. There is a deeper layer here, too. Burial does something for the living, not just the dead. When early humans buried a body, they were also marking a place to return to. Some researchers believe this may be one of the earliest forms of territorial memory, a way of saying this ground belongs to us. Our history is here, our dead are here. A grave is a message left for the future, whether or not the people leaving it understood it that way. You still do this. You visit graves. You visit memorials. You return to the place where something ended, even though the person is not there in any physical sense anymore. Why? Because the place becomes a container for a relationship that your brain has not fully let go of. Neuroscientists who study grief describe this as a kind of ongoing attachment, the mind continuing to model a relationship with someone who no longer exists in the world. That sounds inefficient. It sounds like a glitch. But it may be the exact same mechanism that once made ancient humans dig graves instead of walking away. The attachment does not switch off just because the person is gone. It searches for somewhere to go. A grave gave it somewhere to go. There is one more piece of this, and it is the part that should unsettle you the most. The earliest deliberate burials cluster around a specific window in human evolution, right around the time our ancestors were developing more complex social bonds, longer childhoods, and deeper cooperation between unrelated individuals. Some researchers believe these are connected. That the same wiring that allowed early humans to form intense, lasting bonds with people who were not blood relatives is the same wiring that made their deaths unbearable to ignore. You cannot have one without the other. The capacity for deep love and the capacity for devastating grief appear to be the same trait, viewed from two different angles. You did not choose to grieve. It was never a decision. It is the cost of the same system that lets you love someone in the first place, a system that is at least 100,000 years old, quite possibly far older, and quite possibly not even exclusively human. So the next time you stand at a funeral, in your black clothes, doing exactly what you already somehow knew to do, remember what you are actually part of. Not a tradition invented by a religion, not a custom invented by a culture. You are performing a behavior old enough to have been shared by a species that no longer exists. A behavior that made no evolutionary sense on its own, and survived anyway because it was never really about survival. You are standing at a funeral. You are wearing black. Someone is crying 2 rows behind you. And for the first time, you understand exactly why.